if we don't have targets, then it's really easy to miss them. Then I want to go in and actually see what I find inside of Shopify. I want to understand the gross sales. I want to understand the discount rate, the return rate, the AOV, the units per transaction, the split of returning customer revenue versus first-time customer revenue, the conversion rate of the site, the bounce rate of the site. So really just those clear defining metrics.
Welcome to another episode of the Beauty and the Brand podcast. I'm so excited to have Marissa Rodriguez here. She's a former CMO and COO turned e-commerce growth strategist who's helped her clients generate over $100 million in online revenue. After leaving corporate life behind, she built a location-independent business from Greece, proving that success doesn't require burnout or boardrooms. Today, she empowers founders to build businesses that scale sustainably and on their own terms with clarity, data, and a freedom-first mindset. So welcome, Marissa. So excited to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad we made this work. This is our second attempt, guys, because our first attempt, failed, but now we're here and we're so excited to do this for you all. So Marissa, you were deep in the corporate world, CMO, CEO, big titles, big pressure. What ultimately pushed you to walk away and bet on yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was working on a turnaround business in New York City, really great CEO, amazing team of people. We spent 8 months on it, and I went on Christmas break and got a phone call January 5th, 2015 from the CEO telling me that the business was shutting down effective immediately. And I was blindsided. No one saw that coming. The founder just decided he no longer wanted to make the investment that he needed in the business. And it was the first time in my adult life that I didn't have a job. And so what came of that experience, right, like when you're go, and then all of a sudden you come to a screeching halt, you have a moment to be like, is this really what I want to do? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? And as I was starting to go out and interview for other roles, I just felt this dread inside of me. It's like, this isn't what I want to do. And when I really sat with myself on what do I want to do, I wanted to be able to consult and work with a lot of different businesses, a lot of businesses that were interested in growth, but I didn't exactly know how to do that. Consultants on their own was not something that I saw in the industry that I was in fashion and wholesale and retail. You think of consultants, you think of people working for the big guys like
Totally.
Boston Consulting Group, Accenture, all that. But I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I went for it without necessarily having the structure or the plan. But once I made that move, I never looked. And that was my last corporate job. And I opened up my first LLC maybe 3 months later. And that was it.
And what made you ultimately decide to move to Greece?
So that's a whole other story. So 2021, I've now been working, as an independent contractor full-time since 2015. And it was right after COVID. It was still kind of COVID-like. It was June 2021. I decided I needed to travel by myself for the first time in my life, go somewhere and face this fear of being alone. I think COVID really showed me some of my fears of not having family or friends and feeling isolated. And I was like, I need to go face that. I need to go figure this out. Greece was always a place that I was like, I'll go someday when I'm in love, when I'm in a relationship. That day just never arrived. And I got the opportunity to go. And I at the time I got a one-way ticket. I thought maybe I would stay 10 days because I had never traveled alone in my life. And I stayed 101 days. I went to 11 islands. There was zero issue with any of my clients. And it was incredible because I would wake up in Greece in the morning, North America's asleep.
Right.
I would have 8 hours of the day to myself to think, to be creative, to have a life. And then I would start working around 3 in the afternoon in Greece and at 10, but that's when everyone's going to dinner in the summer anyways.
Right.
So it just changed my life. Halfway through that experience, I was like, what am I doing in New York? I work in e-commerce. This is ridiculous. I can do it from anywhere in the world.
100%.
And that's what I did. Within 6 months of stepping foot in Greece for the first time I moved. I packed up my life after almost 21 years in New York City. And that was 3.5 years ago.
That's amazing. And how's it going so far? Like, do you still love it?
I love it.
Mm.
I absolutely love, I never had the dream to leave the United States or to move abroad. So you know, I feel like there's a movement right now of a lot of people like being like, I'm leaving the US and like that. I love America and I'm proud to be an American and my business is based in America. It will always be based in America. But I find that I spent almost 21 years of my life in a rhythm in New York where I would stop at 6 a.m., rushing already behind schedule, trying to get everything in before 9 a.m. and just on autopilot, like thinking that's the way that it had to be. And coming here, I think opened up so much creativity, so much freedom,
Mm.
a different pace of life. And within that space, I launched a new business because I had the time to sort of
Right.
think and be like, what do I want to be doing in the next 5 and 10 years of my life? And so, yeah, I love it. I think it's
Mm.
incredible. And it's also why I'm so passionate in general about e-commerce because I really do think it's like the unfair advantage of this era. People don't realize it would have been inconceivable one generation ago to be living in a country, earning your income in another country, working on building and growing and launching businesses in another continent, right? And
Mhm.
then 7 to 10 hours ahead of my clients and some of the businesses that I work with and I serve. But it's advantageous because
Totally.
e-commerce is open
Mm.
24 hours a day. So I have
Yeah.
eyes on the business while they're sleeping. By the time
Yeah.
they wake up, I understand what's happening, what needs to be actioned upon. So I also think it's helped me be, in general, more effective at what I do.
100%. It's hard, like you're able to do all this back end work without the constant like notifications and interruption. You can hyper focus during when everyone's sleeping. And also when it comes to ads, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like especially if your target customers in the US, a lot of that sort of a lot of conversions happen in the mornings and the evenings, not sort of in the middle of the day as much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the business. I think that different businesses have different peaks in terms of ads. Some are really successful or they drive more on the weekends. Some have a midday boost and also that shifts over time as their audiences grow. But in general, the ecosystems that I build for e-commerce are global. So, when I think of
Mm.
the team of specialists that I tap into for a lot of the businesses, my media buyer is in Brazil. Another one is in North
Love
Macedonia. I
that.
have a CRO in Portugal. I have, my VAs in the Philippines. Like this sort of this new way of working, right? Also, I think allows you to just find the best people at what they do. So
100%.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so let's talk e-commerce. You've helped your clients generate over 100 million in e-commerce revenue. Like that's huge. What was that first big win that made you realize, okay, I've got something?
The first business that I launched, that I helped launch for two first-time e-commerce founders was in 2017. We started working on it in 2016, and back then it was the wild, wild west of e-commerce. There were no proven systems. Everything was really in its infancy, and so that first 2 years was really tough because I was learning trial by fire. I didn't have somebody that could guide me and I was hired to bring these things to life. I think hitting seven figures in that first year with that first business and making a ton of mistakes made me be like, I just did this and I literally messed up left and right. I trusted the wrong people. I did the wrong things. I was scattered. And so I took all of those learnings into the next business that I launched in 2019, and everything just went faster. And then over
Hmm.
time, I started to understand and develop like what's real versus what's not real. What are the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves? There was
Yes.
never any doubt in my mind about the potential of direct-to-consumer, which is specifically what I do in e-commerce. Is businesses that don't sell in any other channel. They don't have Amazon, they don't have retail, they don't have wholesale. Like if you only have your own website, you have to be operating at the highest level of excellence. And so I think it was much more of, I always knew the potential was there. It was just about mining the understanding of that ecosystem. And
Right.
every single time I just got better. And the businesses got better and better.
I love that. You mentioned what's real, what's not real, what are the must haves and nice to haves. Can you touch on that a little bit more? Like, what are those like must haves and what are versus the nice to haves?
Yeah, I could talk about this all day. So, one of the things that people get, there's a lot of noise in e-commerce. And there's a lot of noise, one, because there's people that need to push out content 24/7. And a lot of the information that people receive is not true, or it confuses them and it derails them from the realities. E-commerce, especially direct to consumer, again, if you don't have any other point of sale, you have to understand the way that the ecosystem works. And the name of the game is you have to drive traffic to your website 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in order to survive, especially if you own inventory, especially if you've made huge financial commitments to inventory for months before you can sell it. And so I
Right.
think that one of the things that people get wrong is they spend a lot of time trying to focus on organic and reels and getting influencers and trying to go viral. And it's like all of those things are going to create these peaks and valleys if you're lucky,
Mm,
right? But they're not going to give you the consistency that Meta's algorithm and Google's algorithm are going to provide if you know what you're doing. And so I think
right.
that's one of the biggest confusions. I think the other one is, people are very focused on trends and tactics and trying to go viral. But in my experience, if you want to have something that's repeatable, if you want to have something that's consistent, if you want something that's predictable, where you can predict the growth of your business month over month and year over year, you have to play in the ecosystem. You have to become an expert at Meta, Google, and email. Those are the three most important things. And so everything else is sort of like a nice to have if you have the bandwidth for it. But those are the must-haves. The business can't survive. Your direct to consumer website will never hit its potential if you don't understand how to do those three things really well.
And when you say Google, are you talking about Google Ads or SEO?
Ads.
Mm,
Ads. I mean,
okay.
SEO is something that technical SEO is super important. We want to make sure that the site has all of the technical things that it needs. The images are set up right, the back end is set up right. But SEO otherwise, right, especially content SEO, there's 14 million websites in the United States. The idea that people think that they're going to write a blog and they're going to come up on Google is naive at best. Like, there's no way. So when I say Google, I mean paid search on
Mm,
Google. And that's the way that the flow normally works. People see an ad on Meta. Most of them will go to Google to make sure that you're a real business. So they'll search for you on Google. And then obviously, your job is to get their email. Your job is to then move
right.
things forward from there. But I always like to really simplify it for people and say there's only three actions online that a user can take that matter. They can click on an ad in an email, they can subscribe to your email list, or they can purchase your product. Everything else that there's so much noise around, shares, views, likes, followers, like those are vanity metrics that don't ever necessarily correlate to revenue. Does that
Mm,
make sense?
yeah.
The things that will lead to revenue is like they have to click. If they don't get to your website, we can't make money. If they
Right.
don't join your email list, you're missing an opportunity. Email is the only other asset that an e-commerce business has other than its inventory. And then if they don't purchase, you're not going to survive. So those are really the three things. If we distill everything else, that is the most important.
I like how streamlined that is. It's I like that it's like 3 points straight to the point. Can you give us like a case study example? Like walk us through like a client that you've worked with who, was maybe doing all of the things and then you kind of brought them, streamlined things for them, and then it allowed that business to take off.
Well, I think that's been what I've done with every single one of my clients. Again, most of the e-commerce founders and business owners that are out there are first-time founders and business owners, and
Mm,
first time in e-commerce. So there hasn't been a business that hasn't exponentially benefited from having me there because I've done this so many times. So whether it's a first time founder who's hired me and, hit seven figures in their first 12 months because they had a very precise game plan of what needed to occur, or whether it's a client that I walk in and the business is maybe already at seven figures. Like one of my clients was doing, you know, relatively well, 10 years in the game, finally had hit seven figures. And within 4 years of working together, this business was doing 30 million a year in revenue.
amazing.
Right. So I just think that Yeah, it's obviously it helps to have somebody around you or near you that knows what they're doing and is intimate in the ecosystem and understanding what it takes to be the best in direct to consumer.
Mm. So, okay, so let's talk about like, let's say we're talking about a younger brand. Let's say they're, maybe not a seven-figure brand yet, maybe they're a six-figure or low six-figure brand. When you step into that e-commerce brand, maybe you have one brand in mind. What's the first thing that you audit to figure out like what's working and what's broken?
So that's a really great question. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll audit and then analyze the metrics and the KPIs of the business. Forget what the founder believes right now. I want to go into Shopify, Klaviyo, GA4, their meta, and see the state of everything. From there, the next thing that I would be thinking about is, okay, what's the vision for the business? Is there clarity on what this business wants to achieve in the next 12 months? Can the founder tell me the three things that the business has to win at? Or do we need to get clear on that? And do I need to help focus the founder on what are those three things that we need to do to really win at this year? And then I have to go understand, is there a real strategy here in place that was built out? The amount of businesses that I walk into that don't have the right financial plan or business plan or people plan. We can't grow if we don't have those things in place. And oftentimes, founders and owners tend to be visionaries and creatives. And sometimes they avoid some of the financials or some of the numbers that need to be looked at. And you can't grow a business just focused on marketing. You have to have an entire ecosystem that can support it. You need the ops, you need the capital, you need to understand who you need, when you need them, what they need to do. And so that's the steps. And then after I've cleared all of that, then we need to sit and understand, okay, are we positioned? Are we dialed in on what the value proposition here is, the solution that we bring to people, the use case? When do people buy this product and why? Because that has to be so well defined. And that eventually is going to lead to an entire testing mechanism and roadmap that I utilize that'll help us get the best website we can, the best paid ads program we can, and the best email marketing.
Okay. So, because I know our founders and those that are listening in our audience, what one of the things that they love so much about these episodes is that we love to get into the weeds. Like we love to get into more of the details. So can you give us a little bit, shine light a little bit more? You mentioned like I get under the hood, I look at Shopify, I look at Klaviyo, Meta, like what are you specifically looking for? Are there specific KPIs or metrics that, you want to see or are the most important to you? Like give us a little bit more of that juicy details of what that audit looks
Yeah, well, first of all, does the business have a forecast by month already done in terms of what the business is going to spend every month on paid ads, what it's going to generate in revenue? And is that forecast broken down at a channel level where we can see what the expectation is for Meta, for Google, organic, direct, email, and any other channel that they're going to have? That's the first thing. Oftentimes that's missing. There is no forecast broken at the channel level. And if we don't have targets, then it's really easy to miss them. Then I want to go in and actually see what I find inside of Shopify. I want to understand the gross sales. I want to understand the discount rate, the return rate, the AOV, the units per transaction, the split of returning customer revenue versus first time customer revenue, the conversion rate of the site, the bounce rate of the site. So really just those clear defining metrics. And then I want to dive in further and understand how big is the email list, how many emails are we adding in every single month, what's the performance of the email channel, what is it generating, validate everything in GA4 as opposed to only looking at the in-channel, in-platform attribution. And then obviously like go into Meta and into Google and understand what is happening there in terms of how's the campaign structure set up? Are they utilizing Meta in the way that I utilize Meta, which is not just as a last click ROAS opportunity, but really as something that elevates and uplifts the entire ecosystem. So understanding all of the regular high level metrics and KPIs, understanding if there's a plan, what they've actually achieved versus what they want to achieve, how much inventory do they have to be able to achieve that, how much capital is available to invest in paid ads and invest in people, because oftentimes a lot of the smaller businesses are also undercapitalized. And so the owners might not truly understand how much they need to spend in certain areas of the business in order to generate growth and more revenue. So
Absolutely.
that's the first step of the audit, is just inputting in all of these numbers. I obviously understand, benchmarks in terms of comparison, but the first part is gathering the data and
Mm,
then analysis of where is the disconnect happening, if at all. Where is the opportunity that we're not capitalizing on right now, and what are the changes that we need to make? Like, I've walked into businesses that are doing, okay numbers, but they have a terrible website, and it becomes really glaring to me, like, oh my
mm,
god, we need to change this whole website. This website is not good, it's mediocre.
right,
We can't have a great business with a mediocre website. The change of the website all of a sudden catapults the business to over 100% growth year over year, and it was something
right.
that simple. But again, if you don't know what a great direct to consumer website has to do in functionality
Mhm,
design, you might have deferred to an agency that actually isn't a specialist in it,
mm,
created a nice website, but not a website that had to do what you needed to do. So
right.
it's kind of like it has to be holistic. There's no
Um,
way that you can grow in just one silo. And I give the analogy of a garden, right? If a flower doesn't bloom, you don't blame the flower, you blame the environment. You've got to think about the soil,
mm,
the water, the sunshine, right? Like, there's all of these different components, and e-commerce is the exact same way. You have to be looking at the entire ecosystem and whether or not it's set up to grow and scale.
absolutely. Yes to all of that. When I'm working with our founders, there's so many different factors, right? And to look at and to make changes and improvements on ultimately impact. Sometimes you have to go 5 steps back in order to go 10 steps forward. And so there's all these like, little and big things like the website that are underperforming, yet they're spending potentially thousands on ads that are just fizzling out. Like maybe the ads are performing okay, but then it just sort of like you're just losing all those people that are that are coming to your site because the site isn't converting at the level that it needs to. So
Oh, for
I love
sure.
that you mentioned.
And also sometimes it's that the ecosystem is so disconnected. Part of the beauty of e-commerce, one of the strengths of e-commerce is also one of the weaknesses. The strength is that you have specialists and subspecialists that are really good at their one puzzle. That is really great because you have incredible experts. The problem with that is oftentimes those specialists and subspecialists don't understand the entire whole. Right?
Mhm.
For example, I was, working with a business owner who spent $250,000 on paid ads with an agency. That agency never thought about email, or the importance of those paid ads have to deliver email, and that was not set up, and no one ever told him. So he spent all of this money on paid ads and never really acquired any emails. And
Oh my
so,
gosh.
yeah, but these are the things that occur because your traditional media buyer is just thinking about Meta as a last click ROAS. So they're not creating campaign
Mm,
email registration. They're not telling you, hey, you need to have that pop-up trigger on your site within 3 to 5 seconds with an offer and make it really compelling. They're not
mm,
thinking about email because their job is just Meta, right?
yeah,
And so what
totally.
also occurs sometimes is that there's just a failure of missed opportunities, because if there isn't a generalist in the business that understands how all of these things interconnect, then you are depending on specialists who fundamentally aren't generalists and don't understand. And for small
Right.
businesses, this becomes one of the most critical things is
I love that you're bringing this, like the way that you framed it, where you mentioned like the generalist, the one that sees the high level and sees how every single little piece connects, how important that is. Yeah,
well, that's
absolutely.
self-sufficiency. And that's my biggest message for business owners and entrepreneurs is like, you need to know enough to be dangerous. You need to know enough to ask the
Yes.
right questions. You
Yes.
cannot put the future of your business in the hands of other people and
Yes.
abdicate your responsibility and your power, because you're not going to like where you end up. And again,
Mhm.
It's not necessarily their fault. The industry is so fragmented. It is an industry of specialists and subspecialists. But if you, as the owner and business owner, are not the generalist, then you have one of two options. You either need to invest a lot of money in somebody that is, and or you need to take the steps necessary to become that person in your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always say, like, until you hit a certain level, you have to know how to do it yourself so that A, you know how to delegate most effectively. But B, you also know how to course correct. You also know how to, make sure that things are actually working the way they need to be. Otherwise, you're just, like you said, entrusting somebody to do it all for you blindly.
Yeah. And I'll take it a step further. One of the things that I tell founders and owners all the time is don't you even try to run your own meta ads. You cannot compete with a ninja who does this all day long that only does this. You will not be successful. That being said, you better understand enough about the paid ads ecosystem so that you can tell them the processes that you need for your business. So that you can say, I expect creative testing. I want to see this amount of ads. I want this campaign structured like this. I want reporting every single week from you. Right? So it's more about being able to drive that bus. But by no means do I advocate for a founder or a business owner to sit there and try to figure out how to run the ads themselves. You can't compete. That's not a good time. That's not how you're going to grow your business. You want these specialists and subspecialists because they are that good. You just need to be able to direct them. You need to be able to look under the hood, and you need to be able to ask the right questions
Yes.
to push them, right? As opposed to allowing them to dictate to you how the process is going to be because you actually don't know. You want to learn about the process and you want to learn about, the tips and tricks and the best practices. And then you want to say, hey, these are the things that I want to see, because some media buyers, for example, will just set it and forget it.
Right.
They'll run ads for 2 weeks and they'll tell you that that's normal. If you don't know any better, you're going to be like, okay, I
Yeah.
don't know. But if you actually take the time to learn, you're going to be like, no, that doesn't work for me. This isn't the right person to be running my business.
Right. Absolutely. So you mentioned last click ROAS, and talk to me a little bit more about that, where, you mentioned media buyers many of them just focusing on that last click ROAS. Conversely, what do you like to implement beyond that point?
Great question. So I find that, and again, everybody has to remember that there is a very low, it's very easy to get into this industry, right? The requirements to become a media buyer, you could take a $20 course and call yourself a media buyer. Most media buyers today, a lot of them really just understand the meta UI and are really just focused on trying to get as many purchases as they can in meta. And they actually think that a high ROAS on meta is great. I like to work with media buyers that are really performance growth marketer. The people that I work with can tell you down to the dollar, if I spent X amount of money on meta and X amount of money on Google, this is how much will come through on meta for revenue, Google for revenue, organic and direct for revenue, email for revenue, because again, they're focused on building that email list as well. And so they're looking at the entirety of the business. And so I focus on a blended ROAS. That's always my North Star. And that means that I'm taking into account purchases that are not coming through as a last click purchase from Meta and Google, because the Meta ecosystem uplifts everything else. It makes your affiliate program stronger. It makes your email program stronger because you're building that email list. More people are coming onto your email. And so, what I like to remind people of is on Meta, most people are just scrolling. Only 5% of users are in market. The majority of people aren't sitting scrolling on Meta looking to buy something.
Right.
And so it becomes really important that you also understand how you use Meta for other types of campaigns that are not last click ROAS purchase campaigns. So for example, I do something where we build campaigns that are geared towards email registration because we want to build an email list. And so those campaigns, we're spending money. The ROAS is not going to be the same.
Of
We're
course.
okay with that. We're okay with our ROAS in Meta being lower because we understand the incrementality of the platform and how it helps everything else get bigger and better. And so that's I think one of the things that a lot of people have a hard time. They're like, oh, I have a really high ROAS on Meta. And to me, I'm like, you're leaving money on the table. You're not hitting all the
Mm,
people that you could be hitting. And the businesses that
right.
I work with grow for the most part over 100% year over year because we're expanding that audience and because we
Totally.
understand that it's a very limited way to look at the power of what that algorithm can do for the overall business.
I love this. Okay, so essentially, it's like looking at the upside down triangle, and what you're saying. I just want to kind of mirror this back to you is that oftentimes a media buyer will just focus on the bottom of the funnel or bottom of the triangle, where it's like focus on conversion. But you're saying you're also reaching the top, where it's like making people problem aware. And then you're also reaching the middle, which is like they're problem aware, but they don't know you and they don't know if they can trust you yet.
For sure. I think 100% that's accurate. Again, this is why I like to make it really simple. Click, subscribe. And so we're utilizing Meta throughout all three of those processes, right? Which is why the email component and utilizing, Meta to build that email list is such a critical part of what we do. 100%. I think that a lot of me, again, back to what the problem is with the ecosystem. If you have a media buyer that is just doing Meta that doesn't think about the impact to the whole, then they miss certain opportunities. And if the gold star of media buying is try to give you the highest ROAS you can on Meta, those media buyers are going to do things that are very focused on conversion. They're also going to do things that I don't advocate for, like remarketing and retargeting on Meta, spending again on the exact same customer. Whereas, like, we're building an email list, we should be able to tap these people on email, right? We should not have to spend more money to hit the same person on the same platform. So it's just like expanding the view and understanding that sometimes someone needs to join your email list. They're not ready to purchase yet. They need to understand more of what you bring to the table. And this is also why I'm a very big advocate on, like, businesses also have to really understand the power of direct response marketing. Every single email, every single ad, every single touch point on your website has to be very directed in terms of value, solution, problem, use case, which I think is also something that a lot of brands often miss.
Mm-hmm. Okay, love this. So, okay, I want to ask you a fun question. I don't know if it's a fun question, but you might find it fun. What's one popular growth hack or ecom strategy you think is totally overhyped or misused?
Well, I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't want to hear, which is that I don't believe in hacks or trends or virality. Well, I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't want to hear, which is that I don't believe in hacks or trends or virality. The things that work in e-commerce and the reason my clients have grown so fast and so much is because we are masters of the fundamentals. There is no way of skipping the consistency, the discipline, the rigor of speed and processes that have to be in your business. And so I'm the person that is going to tell you the opposite. I'm going to tell you, like, forget, there's no shortcut here. The reason it compounds and the reason that businesses grow like rocket ships is because they master the game. You have to understand what is the most critical, and there's no bypassing of the fundamentals. So when I see businesses that are spending a lot of time, again, trying to do reels and trying to do trends and trending audio and go viral on TikTok, I'm like, I'm not your person, because those are not the businesses that I want to work on. I want a business that I can rely on, depend on, predict, forecast, and that can grow year over year. So, sorry, I'm not the fun one now. That answer is never what people want to hear, but it's the truth. The truth is that there are no shortcuts here. You don't have to do a lot of things great in e-commerce direct to consumer, but the few things you have to do, you have to excel and you have to become masterful in your execution of them.
And can you remind the audience again, what are those few things? I know we've spoken about them earlier, but if you can just give us a little refresher.
Yeah. So there's really three things. You have to master the paid ads ecosystem. Meta and Google are critical. You have to master email marketing and be building that email list and doing that really well. And lastly, all of your content and positioning has to be super directed, problem, solution, value proposition, use case. A lot of times I see businesses that put out these beautiful, almost like editorial like imagery and emails. And it's no one cares, no one has time. You literally have seconds of someone's attention. And if they don't see themselves in that value proposition, that problem solution, in that use case, they're not going to click. And if they don't click, they're not going to join your email list, they're not going to buy. And so I think that really also understanding the requirements of how direct response has to occur online is also the big one. So those are the three things: Meta and Google, email marketing, direct response. And lastly, staying really focused on click, email subscriptions, and purchases.
Love it. All right. So you've talked about, in the past, you talked about visibility being the root of most growth problems. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you don't get eyeballs on your website, you can't sell. So the name of the game is you need to get traffic. Now, the way that you're going to get the traffic is by having an algorithm that's going to be way more powerful than anything you could ever do. That's where we utilize Meta and Google, right? Those algorithms, the more they learn, the more they bring you the right people. Then it's on you to make sure that your messaging, your positioning, you are very clear on the why of your business and how it serves somebody else and how it makes their life better or more convenient or easier. And that's how we get the first part of it, which is the click. But if you don't have traffic, you can't sell. And if you don't have people clicking over from an ad and from an email, then your positioning is not compelling enough. As much as you might like it and think it's really pretty, it's not solving something for somebody. And when I say solving something for somebody, I don't mean just in a utilitarian sense, right? Emotional triggers and emotional needs can be just as compelling, right? The need to feel seen or feel beautiful or any of those things there's just a way that it has to be framed so that you're speaking to somebody in a very real, tactical way. And so that they immediately are like, oh my God, that's me. This is exactly what I was looking for. Because again, most people aren't in market to shop. So you really have to cut through that noise and give them a very strong, compelling reason.
Absolutely. Okay. One of the things I've heard you say repeatedly is the ecosystem. And so I'm curious to know, I'm sure that what an ecosystem looks like is different at each stage that a brand enters, right? So I'm curious to know, like, what is the difference in terms of taking a brand? What does that ecosystem look like when you have a newbie brand just getting started, which is a lot of folks in our audience? So going from that 0 to 6 figures, and then what shifts and changes are being made going from 6 figures to multi-6 figures, and then multi-6 figures to 7 figures?
No, this is a great question. And I'm happy to have the chance to clarify this. The direct-to-consumer e-commerce ecosystem does not change. Whether you are pre-launch, 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, you are always dealing with click, email subscriptions, and purchases. The mechanics of the ecosystem also never change. It is always Meta, Google, and email as the primary things. Your messaging has to be dialed in. I use ecosystem as a way to delineate direct-to-consumer from other business models that are out there. Amazon, TikTok shops, retail, wholesale, those are fundamentally different ecosystems with different requirements and different rules of the game. So I give people the analogy of sport. I don't play sports, but the sports analogies here really make a lot of sense. Oftentimes what will happen is you have a business owner who has retail experience or who has Amazon experience, and they try to take those learnings and what they know about those worlds and do them here in direct to consumer. It doesn't work. It's like showing up at a tennis court with a basketball. You're not going to play either game properly. And so the difference between a business that's at pre-launch and a business that's 6 figures, 7 figures, or 8 figures in the e-commerce direct-to-consumer ecosystem, you're doing the same things, but it's almost like the analogy of karate. The difference between the white belt and the black belt is the mastery over the moves, right? They're still working on the same moves. And so that is what changes. What changes is that we become better and better. We understand more and more. We're playing at a higher level because we've done the training, we've spent the hours, we've done the reps, we've implemented the systems and the processes, and we're just fine tuning and fine tuning. So that's what I mean. But what, and I always say this to people in a way that I hope that this makes them feel better, right? It's the same things. We're just playing at a higher level, right? Basketball is still basketball, whether you're playing at the NBA level or whether you're playing in a little children's league, right? The sport is still the same, but it's just the level that you play it at gets better and bigger. And so that's what this is like. And so I always want to tell people, like, everybody thinks that it's changing so much, the environment of e-commerce, and it fundamentally really isn't. We're still focused on the exact same things. So it's just a question of getting to really learn what these things are and get better and better at them year over year, month over month, week over week.
Absolutely. So beyond optimizing the ecosystem, which is very strategic and data-driven, there's also this emotional, personal element of the founder, right? And the journey they are on. And if they're a first-time founder versus fourth-time founder, right? Totally different. And things that maybe you've seen is like overhiring, overbuilding, adding new products at the wrong time, or too many products at the wrong time, chasing trends. How do you help guide that founder to not be reactive and to really follow the path and that clear direction that you've laid out and prevent them from jumping from tactic to tactic?
Yeah, I think that's why you have to have a strategic partner by your side in some capacity, or someone that you can trust, or someone that you can learn from, or someone that can mentor you. When you think of back to sports, when you think of the people playing at the highest level of the game, Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson. Michael Phelps had the same exact coach from when he was 11 through when he won all of his Olympic medals. If you are new to this game, and it sounds like a lot of people in your audience are, then the best thing you can do is go find somebody like me that can give you the real on what you need to be focused on. Because I think that clarity is the number one thing that is missing from a lot of people. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of siloed information. And so I believe that the best thing that any founder and business owner can do is to develop themselves with the help of somebody else, to become that generalist, to have that clarity. If I ask you, what are the 3 things that you're going to win at this year? You better know that off the top of your head, because that is how you're going to allocate all of your resources, right? When all these other opportunities come to you, you're going to be like, wait a minute, is that one of the 3 things that I'm committed to doing this year? If it's not, then it has to go. Because in this world, less is more. More is not more. We want to do less things, but we want to do them better.
Absolutely. We're not looking to be maximalists here.
Yes. But I think that's the biggest thing, right? I think that you have a lot of really smart founders that think to themselves, I can figure this out. How hard can it be? Or they don't necessarily think about the idea of investing in resources, including people that can really help them. That seems like an expense that they don't want to take. They're like, I don't have the money for that. But you need to make an investment on some level for everything. And so when I first started in this world, there wasn't a resource or a person that I could invest in. I had to figure it out by myself, and it was really hard. Those first few years were really difficult. I made a lot of mistakes. I spent a lot of money. I did things that, looking back, I'm like, oh my God, if I only knew what I know now. And so I think that's also a really important message. It's like, in order to grow as a person and to be the kind of founder who's running a 7, an 8, and a 9-figure a year business, you have to also be willing to invest in who you need to become, how you need to be. And part of it is back to having clarity and conviction on the things that are really going to give you the maximum output and the maximum results in your business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So have you noticed, for example, with the founders that you work with at different stages and different levels, is there like a mindset difference? Because we're touching on that a little bit right now. Is there a mindset difference between a founder doing 10K a month versus one that's scaling towards 100K a month consistently?
1,000%. I think there's people that are entering e-commerce and starting e-commerce businesses for different reasons. Some people are just looking to have 10, 20, $30,000 a month in income for themselves. It's actually harder to have a small e-commerce business than it is to have a bigger e-commerce business. And I'm going to tell you why. Again, we need traffic 24 hours a day. The more data, the more events, and what I mean by events is people landing on your website, signing up for your email list, purchasing, adding to cart, all that stuff. The more events occur, the more that data goes back to the algorithms of Meta and Google. And the more that they work, the more that they understand, the more they start bringing the right people to you. So it's actually really difficult to get traffic 24/7 and qualified traffic when you're spending very little because you have smaller goals, which is counterintuitive, right? It's counterintuitive, but it's almost like, again, the more data points these algorithms have, the faster they work, the smarter they become, the more they start to bring things to you. So I think that that's a really big shift in mindset. Also, I think that a lot of people, back to confusing ecosystems, right? The game of retail or the game of brick and mortar or the game of having had a boutique or a specialty store, you were really limited by the physical traffic of whoever lived in your town and in your area. So it's really difficult sometimes for founders to understand there's 276 million Americans shopping online every single day. We have unprecedented access. Like e-commerce democratized commerce. You no longer, and again, we're doing the exact same things, whether we're a big business or a little business. It's the same tools, it's the same vehicles, it's the same things that we have to master. And so I think that's also a really difficult switch for some people. Maybe even for people that had a store before, all of a sudden some of the numbers of e-commerce feel like really scary because they would have been unachievable for a little boutique to be doing in their hometown. But we can ship nationwide. And also today, it's never been easier to also be shipping in Canada or the UK or Australia. So definitely, I think that there is mindset things that occur. I think that it's not very difficult to do 7 figures in direct to consumer e-commerce only revenue, but you have to have that sort of decisiveness of, I'm going to do this. If you wobble with it, then it's not going to happen. But isn't that the metaphor for everything in life? If you don't have conviction, if you don't go all in, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? If you just use half of the ingredients in the recipe, or you just half cook it, it's not going to work. So I think that's also some people wanting to put one foot in and one foot out doesn't work. And then
yes, absolutely. Like just kind of get a feel, right? Dip your toe in the water. It's you got to commit to something. Like pick a lane, pick something.
Yeah. And again, and I think there's some people that want to try to do like fast and furious trend driven e-commerce, whether they're drop shipping and not necessarily thinking about building something long lasting or with longevity. They just want to make some money and exit, or make some money and pivot to something else. And those exist. I'm not the person to really talk about that. I think that if you want something that can be really meaningful for you and for your community and for your family and friends, then you have to go all in and you have to make a decision that you're going to learn the game and you're going to become the best that you can at the game.
I love that. I love it. Learning the game and get the best at the game, become the best at the game. Speaking of the game, have you seen AI, data automation, particularly AI, have you seen that change and any part of your ecosystem? Obviously, I'm sure with email, but anything in terms of digital marketing, ads, like has AI been a support to optimize those funnels or those systems?
Yeah, so there's some ways that I think that AI is incredibly helpful already today for a lot of businesses. One way AI really helps is with customer service. As a business starts to grow and scale, the ability to need less real humans and to utilize some of these AI tools that are out there, they're incredible. They really do an amazing job, and they have helped a lot of small, mid-sized businesses be able to save in a lot of ways. Another way that I think that AI has really shifted things is copy. I think that now you can utilize, if you understand the kind of copy you need and you have the right kind of prompts to put into chat or into Claude and you can direct it, that can really save you from needing a copywriter for the website, for email, for ads. On the creative side, I don't think AI is there yet. I think that the people making ads with AI, they're not where they need to be, and I don't advocate for using it yet. I think that AI also is going to be really interesting in how it's going to make sourcing and manufacturing a lot easier, like getting some of that information of where to produce or where to manufacture, who has this skill set. And also, I'm hoping that AI will be able to really make a change in inventory planning, which is still for a lot of businesses being handled on Excel by an inventory planner. I think that'll be an area to watch. But where I think that AI overall is going to potentially upend the ecosystem, and we're not there yet, and it's definitely not something that's going to happen this year, next year, or maybe even the year after, but it's something on my mind. Right now, the user behavior is someone sees an ad on Meta and they go to Google to search for your brand. What happens when people stop going to Google? What happens when you have more and more people utilizing generative search, whether it is chat or Claude or Grok or any of these? That's going to change the e-commerce environment. It's going to change how brands have to position themselves. How do you reach that person if they're not going to Google? So that's definitely an area that I'm very curious to follow. Perplexity is starting to play a little bit in that space of how generative AI can start to give shopping recommendations. And so there's a lot of different ways that could go. Could become affiliate driven. They could be all monetized links, or it could just shift the relationship between brands or the relationship potentially in the future between a Shopify and a chat. So this is something that I'm thinking of. It's not here yet, but it's definitely one of the first major things where I'm like, oh, that could really impact and disrupt the ecosystem from the way that it's been. That could be a really changing thing.
Absolutely. One thing that I was just talking with someone about is she had such an interesting perspective on the AI even in Google, how now, I forgot the name for it, but Google spit out like its AI response for any question. Yes. And what's interesting about that is she was like, this might be almost like a revamp of PR, because the more content or PR, especially at credible sources you have, the more the generator is going to have to pull from. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. And I was like, yeah, actually, that kind of makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
I would argue, though, that all of the big publishers are affiliates now. They all are monetizing their links. It's very difficult to find a PR or publisher. All of them are literally monetizing links, which is why I said I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens if it becomes an affiliate play, if the monetization element starts to occur on chat or Grok or one of these. I don't think that it'll be pure PR, because already we don't have pure PR on the internet anymore. Everyone's making money off of their recommendations, off of those articles that you read. All of those links are monetized at this point. But yes, the idea of it is more brand awareness, but it's coming potentially with a commission on the side, which we don't mind. We don't mind that at all. But yeah, that's one of the things that I think will be really interesting to see how this plays out or how it's built out, especially if you think of potentially a Shopify having a relationship with a chat and what that would look like. Or potentially people going to chat and being like, I need the best underwear, seamless or whatever. And then how those different things are going to populate, and whether or not then there becomes an advertising arm of all of these generative search, right? So then all of a sudden brands are paying to be featured. So it can go a lot of different ways. And I definitely think that it's something that...
Yeah, that's super interesting. Absolutely. Okay, some quick and dirty questions for founders who are still going at it themselves, and they need to go at it themselves for now before they're ready to work with an expert like yourself. What are some fast ways that they might be able to increase AOV for a beauty brand without overhauling everything?
There's no tricks to this, right? So there's ways to incentivize people to add more to cart by doing, of course, like free shipping thresholds or by offering a discount on more products. There's those kind of mechanisms by creating bundles and having a bundle pack or that sort of stuff that can work. But there's so many other components to building a business, and sometimes it has nothing to do with AOV. I have a client who's doing 30 million a year in revenue, who sells 5 products, and they're all basically the same price. And so that business has grown 1,544% in 48 months, and it's not a function of AOV because AOV doesn't really play in that. It's 5 products, same price. So AOV is not the only way to increase, but I think that for brands trying to do that, either they need to be pushing higher priced products, or they need to be thinking about bundling, or they need to be trying to incentivize users to add more by gifts or free shipping or some sort of discount.
Totally. What's one metric or one number every founder should check weekly?
Everything should be checked weekly. So we need to be looking at our gross sales versus our forecast. I think that's really important. For example, if we're trying to do $50,000 in revenue this month, and in 1 week we've done $8,000, there's a problem. We're not on track to hit the 50,000. I think that sales and knowing your trending sales and how you're trending towards your plan that month is really important. But I think that every week there needs to be, I have this free checklist on my site, which anyone can download. It's a free resource with what are the daily, weekly, and monthly things that you need to be looking at. But we need to look at everything.
Yeah. Speaking of checklists, where would people find that checklist? Can you give us like the URL?
Yeah, if they go to throughexperience.com, there's a resource section and there's a bunch of free things that they can tap into. I also have my recommendation for the Shopify tech stack you need at the different volumes that your business might be at. I have a guide to help you find the right people. I have a free master class that really dives into direct response marketing and value proposition and use cases. There's a bunch of stuff there that they can access that'll hopefully be helpful.
Amazing. Okay. Terms of a couple more questions. In terms of retention, what's the simplest way? Again, putting yourself in the shoes of a founder who's still in the early stages, like what's the simplest way to increase retention that most brands overlook?
Email marketing. What is your email marketing program? We want to be sending out one high value email per week, even if you've just started. Retention, the best channel for retention is email, which is why it's so important that we're building that email list, because we have a direct conversation with them. That is the most important thing.
Amazing. And then what's coming up for you? What's the next thing that's coming for you and for your business?
So there's 2 things right now for my business. On the one hand, I have a program that's always available. That's basically my 3-part growth cycle. It's what I do for all the businesses that I work with year over year, regardless of where they're at, even if they're pre-launch, and helping people understand the what of what is required. And I move them through, these are the 3 phases. This is when you're in each phase. This is what you have to do in each phase. And so that's always available. And then I have a mentorship community that is starting now in June, where I'm going to be really myself and a team of mentors and my entire team of specialists are going to be working in a much more personalized way as strategic partners to businesses. So assessing where they're at and then moving them through 90-day sprints so that they can really see some actionable changes in their business really fast. And I'm very excited about that because what I love is the ability to see the growth occur. And so this is a 12-month program for people that are really serious, really committed, that want this and know that they want the strategic help of someone that's guiding them, and then have access to my entire systems, my entire processes where they can implement it into their business and have somebody, a mentor, that's helping keep them accountable and making sure that they are moving in the right direction.
Love that. Amazing. Well, thank you, Marissa. This has been so enlightening and loved learning your entire expertise in ecom and kind of the behind the scenes. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
Thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the Beauty and the Brand podcast. If you love this episode, please leave us a review. Every review, we appreciate every review and it's super valuable. So thanks everyone. And then we'll see you on the next episode of the Beauty and the Brand podcast.